This is Danny Valbro, President of AIM Dental Marketing, welcoming you to this installment of the Practice Perfection Web-Based Education Series. Today's presentation is titled, Don't Sweat the Small Stuff, Tips for Dealing with the Little Issues in Your Dental Practice That Can Make a Big Difference, and will be delivered by Dr. Len Tau. Chosen as one of the top leaders in dental consulting by Dentistry Today, Len Tau, DMD, has dedicated his professional life to improving dentistry for both his patients and for other dentists. Len helps fellow dentists build broad and compelling online footprints that attract new patients to their practices. He lectures nationally and internationally on using internet marketing, social media, and reputation marketing to make dental offices more visible and credible, as well as how to increase their case acceptance. As an attendee at today's presentation, you will learn what most often stresses out dentists and how to efficiently address these practice stressors, the simple changes you can make today that will have a big impact on your quality of practice, the secret to not sweating the small stuff, and how to deftly respond to negative reviews in a way that actually enhances your reputation. You are invited and encouraged to submit your questions at any time using the question button on the provided menu. If Len cannot get to your question during the webcast, he has promised to do so shortly following his presentation. Attendance at today's event entitles you to apply to receive 1.5 hours of PACE-approved continuing education credit. Shortly following Len's presentation, you will receive information on how to apply to receive your CE. To be eligible, you will need to successfully complete a brief quiz, as well as note the following course number, which is TAU 110122. Again, that's TAU 110122. And now it is my distinct pleasure to welcome back to the Practice Perfection stage my friend and colleague, Dr. Len Tau. Hello, Len.
Hi, Danny. How are you? Thank you so much
Great.
for inviting me back to share my expertise, my passions, my life with your audience. I think we did this last year, and we spent a whole session on online reviews, generating them, and dealing with negative reviews. Well, today is going to be more about myself. I know we didn't include it in the introduction, but this is really a lot about me, my journey, everything I've done in private practice, my transition out of private practice, and currently kind of how I live my life. So I'm super excited to share it with you and your audience. If people want to ask questions, as you said, please put it into the Q&A. I will be happy to answer them during the session. Danny, I know you like to interject sometimes, so please feel free to interject as well. And then I will just get started. So for those that don't know who I am, my name is Dr. Len Tau. I am a dentist. I practiced in Philadelphia for 15 years. We'll go over my story in just a couple of minutes, but I'm here. I'm not selling anything. I love this type. It's just me talking about kind of my journey through practice ownership, practice purchase, practice transition, and everything in between, and how I learned to manage things by not sweating the small stuff. So to begin, one of the things we do in our practice is we run a business. You know, we're the CEO, and I recognized that I was getting stressed out in the day-to-day operations of my office. And I read this quote that really changed how I looked at things. And this quote says, and it's from Reverend Maureen Killoran, that says, "Stress is not what happens to us. It's our response to what happens, and a response is something we can choose." So when I found this quote, it really resonated with me because I realized that I was causing myself to be stressful with things. If I didn't respond a certain way, it wouldn't stress me out. So I urge you, and we're practicing in a very stressful time. Time is tough with COVID closures. Now we're getting back to normal, but attracting new patients to the practice, running the business side of dentistry. Things could be stressful. I talk to dentists every single day, and there's so many things that can stress someone out. So I want to share with you kind of my journey. So I graduated dental school in 1999 from Tufts Dental School in Boston, Massachusetts. My entire life, I had thought I was going to practice with my father, who was a dentist, who unfortunately passed away last June of 2021, sorry. But during my years in college, my dad developed cancer and sold his New York practice. So I knew I was not going to be practicing with him, which is the main motivation for me becoming a dentist. So I had to shift gears. I ended up going to residency in Philadelphia, in the Philadelphia area, settling in a practice in the Philadelphia suburbs for 4 years as the associate. And it was finally time for me to look to buy a practice. In 2007, in March, I purchased a practice, the Pennsylvania Center for Dental Excellence, from someone who had committed suicide. And obviously, I bought it under extraordinary circumstances. It was a great practice. Their doctor was a fee-for-service practice, everything I wanted in a practice. There was the bones of a practice. There was equipment, as you'll see. There was a staff that decided to stay with me after meeting me. Originally, they weren't going to. I had patients who were coming in to meet me or would hopefully come in and meet me and want to stay. But I had the bare bones of a practice, and I paid a premium for it because he was doing really well in his last year of practice, and the practice had nothing to do with him committing suicide, unfortunately. So I ended up buying the practice. I'm settling in. I bought the building as well very quickly into my practice ownership, and I was, for those that are out there, I was $18,000 in debt before I even opened the doors every first month or first day of the month. So my nut or my debt service was $18,000. So I needed to really learn how to, one, market my practice, and two, learn how to attract more new patients. It goes that I basically listened to the gurus in the industry, and I was not a guru then, but I listened to the gurus in the industry. I tried some marketing companies, and it didn't seem to help. So I started to learn how to practice on my to market on my own, and I was very successful. And starting in 2010, I started giving seminars to the entire dental world. Started in Philadelphia, moved my way up. I won the ADA new speaker meeting in 2012. So I didn't do very many small events. I kind of graduated to the main stages at these events. But I learned how to market my practice, and I started teaching it. 400 plus presentations later, I'm finally at a point where my career has ended from a dental perspective. Fast forward 2012, I decided I wanted to help my colleagues with their marketing, and I started a consulting company called iSocial Dental Consulting, and clients would come to me on a referral basis. I would help market their practice for them or help them find people to help market their practice for them. In 2013, I started my own review software called iSocial Reviews, which helped dentists would help dentists get reviews from their patients. It was a manual system. I got 180 clients very quickly for the first 18 months, and then Bird Eye came calling. And for those that don't know, I run the dental division for Bird Eye, but Bird Eye bought my company from me. They acquired me, they acquired my clients, they acquired my patients, my clients and my revenue, sorry. And I transitioned from working 4 days a week clinically to going to 2 days a week clinically, and I brought in an associate in 2017. I knew in 2017 that I was at the tail end of my career, and I knew that within the next 10 years, I was planning to stop practicing dentistry. 2019, I actually decided the end was near. In 2020, COVID hit, and in 2021, I sold my practice to the current owner, Dr. Christine Hahn, who is now the owner of the practice. Now, as we move through this journey that I'm going to show you, I now am headed to where I'm only working one more day, or actually 2 more days in November, and I will end my clinical career November 15th this year. So I am not going to be practicing dentistry anymore. I am transitioning fully to a clinical nature, no more clinical, all marketing. So when I bought the practice in 2007, this is what it looked like. It was very old. It was very, but again, the bones were there. And I knew that I can take it and rehab it. And this is what it looked like when I bought the practice. 6 months later, after buying the building and gutting it, this is what it looked like then. So it was entirely rehabilitated, all new equipment. I still remember that I couldn't believe what I had built. I developed the practice of my dreams at that point, but I certainly wasn't living the life of my dreams. Okay. I was working literally 40 hours a week when clinically I was only working 25. So I was spending 15 hours a week on running the business. I barely saw my family at night because I was working 2 evenings a week as well. But I needed to do this. I needed to work on the business side of my practice. And that's where the stresses came from. In 2010, my heyday, which 2010 to 2012, I was producing about $2.4 million a year in dentistry, working 3.5 days a week as a fee-for-service practice, no insurance, with 5 team members, 1 at the front, 2 at chairside with me, and 1 hygienist. So I was doing extremely well. I was in like the top 10% for production for a solo doctor practice. Again, I had the practice of my dreams, but I certainly wasn't living the life of my dreams. Now, just so you know, this is what the practice looks like now. This is actually a drone video, so it's really cool. But this is an actual drone flying through my office and showing you what it currently looks like in the practice. So I'll let this run. We actually have 2 floors. The second floor, the lower level where the hygiene rooms were, was just recently renovated when this video was taken. Unfortunately, the guy flying the drone couldn't make it down the stairs, so they're only showing the upper level. This was on our website. This is similar to a Google virtual tour, and this drove a lot of new patients to the practice because they got a really nice view of what the practice looks like. So that's my journey to begin with. Again, I'm not going to be practicing dentistry anymore. Now, I'm going to stop that for a second. So we are so busy running the business side of dentistry. We do so many things in the office. And I thought this video, which is about the UPS store and all the ING things, really related to what we do in dentistry. So watch this video.
The UPS store can help your small business with more ink than you realize. Shipping, packing, and boxing save you time for returning, printing, and shredding free you up to focus on. And notarizing, mailing, and mailboxing let you do more. Anything you need, visit a convenience store near you today and get back to doing your other things. Everything for small business, all in one place. The UPS store.
So everybody sees that commercial about the UPS store, and it's all about the INGs that they do. And I said, this relates really well to dentistry. So in reference to Paul Goodman created the term the dentisting in dentistry. These are the INGs of dentisting. So there's lots of them, and feel free to kind of browse them as they come up on the screen. And I'm going to name some of them: drilling, cutting, connecting, batching, saving, filling, torquing, teaching, fixing, billing, brushing, caring, texting. The list goes on and on. These are all things that we do in our practice from a clinical perspective and a business perspective. But doing all of these things can be extremely stressful, as well as doing the clinical part and doing the business part of dentistry. So I want to start off by talking about something that I learned about from Roger Levin while just finishing dental school. So this was back in probably in 1999 or 2000, and this still resonates to me. This was one of the most important lessons I've learned at any CE I have taken. So this is called the 98% decision factor. And the way this works is that because we are a CEO of the practice, we want to focus on the 98% decision factors. 98 decision factors are those decisions that have no influence or no cause for concern. They should be very easy decisions that you make in your life from a business perspective or even from a clinical perspective or a practice perspective. So personal and business. So these decisions, the 98% decisions, should have no relevance on how you live your life.
the 2% decisions really mattered. If you get that wrong, you will be significantly hurt in your life or career, okay? So that's why it's don't sweat the small stuff, okay? But this has been taken to the new level because of this 98% decisions. So 98% of the decisions that we make should be very quick, and it should rarely change your mind, okay? You don't dwell on them or second guess yourself, okay? You make the decision and then you move on. Now, 2% of the time, you have to take the decisions that are extremely serious. You have to give yourself time to mull them over and always engage outside expertise as we go through a final thought process. So when you get a 98% decision wrong, it doesn't really make much of a difference in the overall scheme of things. You know, whether it's a loss of an hour of your life, an unsatisfactory meal, or nominal financial investment gone bad, an incorrect decision doesn't really matter in the long run, okay? Now, 2% decisions are an entirely different matter. They are extremely important decisions. So whether you buy an office, whether you move an office, whether you bring an associate on board, you know, whether you're trying to make a very big investment in something, if you're bringing in a new technology into the practice that will cost you $100,000, these are all 2% decisions that you need to make, okay? So I heard this, and I said, wow, I have to look at things differently. So I have lived my life this way since the moment I've heard this, that 98% of my decisions are made in seconds, and 2% of the decisions I make, I have to mull over. So in my case, selling my practice at the age of 48, I wasn't quite 49 yet, okay? Retiring from clinical dentistry at 49, you know, when I bought my practice, buying in from a dentist who committed suicide. These were all major decisions in my life. Moving to Florida, I live in Florida now. So moving was a huge decision I made, okay? But I went to my advisors, I went to my financial people, I went to my accountants and my lawyers, and I said, can we do this? What do I need to do to be able to retire by the age of 50? These were all things that we decided upon with the help of other people. So those are the 2% decisions, but most decisions in your life for your practice should be 98% decisions. And that's a really, really big thing you have to understand. This literally, and why I talk about it is because it changed my life forever hearing this. So 2%, the 98% decisions are, you know, what do you want to eat for the day? You know, what should I participate or drop an insurance plan? Did the patient show up on the wrong day? Do I have, you know, where are my new patients coming from, or what should I do to increase my new patients? These are all things that are 98% decisions, okay? Losing $50, 98% decision. $5,000, $50,000 should all be, you know, 2% decisions. So I hope you understand this, that you have to start living your life a little bit differently. And this is one of the things that really helped me move on from things when I was stressing about them. So as we talk about these INGs, okay, I want to start talking about things that I did in practice that helped me with some of these INGs. So I think it's so important for those that are listening to this call, this webinar, setting goals. You must set goals in your practice, okay? So if you want to set a daily goal from a production and collection standpoint. You want to set a monthly goal. You want to set a yearly goal. You must have goals in your practice. If you don't have goals, you don't know where your itinerary is going to take you. So you must set goals. I was a very big goal setter. Now, in terms of goals, setting goals will give you direction. They'll energize you. They'll provide a challenge, and they'll make you think outside the box. So setting goals in the practice is so important. And if you don't have goals, I don't know how you have direction on what you're going to do each day. Now, but I want the goals to be SMART goals. So SMART goals are specific, they're measurable, they're attainable, they're relevant, and they're time-based. Okay? So very, very important when you set goals, you want them to be SMART goals. Now, mistakes in setting goals are there's too big, there are too many, they're not specific, and most importantly, in my opinion, they are not written down. So I've always been goal setters, and I'll show you some of the goals I set in a little bit. But what I would like everyone to do while they're listening to this is take out a piece of paper and write down 3 goals, whether they can be for your practice, or they can be personal. So you want to lose some weight. Don't say you're going to lose 75 pounds. Say you're going to lose 20 pounds. You don't want to take your practice from $1.2 to $2 million. Take it from $1.2 to $1.5 million. Make them not so big, okay? But you have to be very specific. You can't just say, I want to lose weight. How much weight do you want to lose? So what I would like everybody to do, whether listening to me here, is set 3 goals for yourself. Again, they can be personal or they can be based on your practice. So every time I talk about goals, I love to show goals that I set. Now, I found this when I moved from Philadelphia to Florida. I was cleaning out all the junk we had, and I found a bunch of papers that my parents had saved. And this was a page I found in all these things that we had done, and it was labeled, Len was 10 years old when he set these goals. So these are goals that I set when I was 10. You can see how the handwriting was pretty poor, but these are 10-year-old. I'm 49 years old now. So check these out. So number 1, to become a successful doctor or lawyer. So I think a dentist qualifies there. Become a good tennis player, and I actually am a good tennis player. I got married. I actually hit that button twice. So I was married twice. I was divorced and then remarried. Had a happy and healthy life. So far at age 49, I'm fairly healthy. I haven't had no major medical problems in my life. Get a good college education. I think going to dental school and college itself qualify for that. Live a long life. We're at 49 right now. Have children. I have 1 child. He's 15 years old. Become rich. I'm not going to complain where I am from a money perspective. Retire by the age of 50, which I'm accomplishing as of next month. I'm 49. Live in Florida. I live in Florida now, and write a book, and I've written 2 books. So it's pretty impressive that at the age of 10, I kind of predicted my future with goals that I wanted to set. Now, what I did was I now set another set of goals that I want to accomplish by the age of 75. So those goals are set now, and they're written down. They're locked in a drawer, so I can then look at them and figure them out. But this is a huge part of my life was setting goals and obviously living them and experiencing them. So I'm a huge goal setter. I can't recommend it highly to make sure you set daily goals, monthly goals, yearly goals in your practice to help you grow even further. Finding your passion, okay? Finding your passion is so important nowadays. If you're not passionate about dentistry, and it's amazing how many people are envious of the fact that at the age of 49, I'm close to retiring from clinical dentistry. If you're not passionate, you need to find something else that will become passion for you. I always say, people ask me why at 49 years old did I decide to retire from dentistry, and it's because I'm passionate about other things. I loved dentistry. I loved clinically treating patients. I loved, the running the business. I loved all those things, but it was very stressful for me, and I knew I needed to find something else to do, and I did. So my passion is helping practices market their reputation, generate reviews, just market their business in general. That's where my career has taken a major turn for it. But you have to find your passion. I know dentists who have been working till they're 80 years old. And like I said, I'm just turning 49 right now, and I can't imagine working another 30 years in the same field and putting 50 years into the dental industry. So if you are listening to this, watching this, and you're saying to yourself, I need to find something out because I don't want to. There are many things out there for you. There are many different industries you can go into to hang off of your dental career. I was very lucky. I found my passion. I went for it, and here I am, 14 years later, and things are very, very different for me now. So I implore you to look at your life, decide, if you are a general dentist and you love doing specific aspects of dentistry and you don't enjoy doing other things, stop doing those other things. I was not passionate about endo or perio or oral surgery. I enjoyed restorative dentistry, so I focused on restoring people's mouths. I did a ton of implants. I did a ton of Invisalign, but I sent all surgeries out. I stopped doing surgery. I stopped doing endo. So if you're not passionate about something in your dental office, stop doing it. Yes, you may have to find something else to make up the difference in money that you are, but if you don't do something, you don't enjoy it. You have to be passionate about what you're doing in your life. And I hope that resonates with you. Controlling your overhead was another stress. So, when you are in debt, $18,000, when you have a busy practice, lots of team members, you have to control your overhead in order to see the other end of things come out. The practices are doing $2 million, but they have an 80% overhead. The business owner is not coming out very good on that sense. So when it comes to controlling your overhead, you want to hit the magic number at 60% or less. So for those that are listening, understand that if your overhead is 60%, that means the practice is profiting about 40%. That's the magic number. It's very difficult to do. My overhead was a little bit higher than this. I never hit that magic 60% or less, but I definitely wasn't high as a lot of other people, and I definitely was lower than the national average. The national average is 74%. So just to put this into perspective for people, that means that if you produced $100, you were only profiting $26 on that overhead at 74%. So it doesn't sound very good, and it really annoyed me when patients were thinking that, hey, I got this beautiful car or this beautiful house, or I'm paying for your son's education. They don't realize how much it costs to run a dental business. 74% is a lot of money, a lot of percentage. So this is how you come up with the blueprint to end up at a 65, 60% or less. And I'll even say 65% or less. So employee expenses are always going to be your top amount, okay? And this includes all payroll taxes, 401k, etc. is 28%. Your lab bill should be a little, I hit the wrong button, sir. Sorry, let's go back. So the lab should be 8% or 4% with a CEREC, 8% without. Rent or mortgage all in should be 5% or less. Your consumable supplies should be about 6% or less. And your marketing should be 6% or less. For those that took the last class with me, I talked about how your marketing expense, you want to spend about 6% of your collections to put into marketing. That's how you end up with really great results from a practice growth perspective, because your marketing is fueling the new patients. But if you add these up all together, you end up with that magic number. So again, one of the things you have to do as an owner of your practice is you have to know your numbers. You don't have a choice, okay? You have to know what your overhead is. You have to know how much how many expenses you have. You have to know these numbers. It's incredible when I talk to dentists how I ask them what how much of their collections are after insurance write-offs. They don't know that. How many new patients they're getting. They have to check how many patients they see in a day. They don't know. I'm a huge fan of Shark Tank, and I'll give you a quote by Mark Cuban a little bit later on. But if you know Shark Tank, they will rip into entrepreneurs who don't know their numbers. So as someone who owns their dental practice, you have to know your numbers, and I will keep on saying that. There's no excuse to running a business and not knowing your numbers by heart, because it's the lifeblood of your practice. If your expenses are too high, you're not bringing enough money into your pockets afterwards. And what is the best way to lower your overhead? Okay? Well, it's very difficult to lower your expenses. I will tell you that. So there's really the only other way you can do it is by increasing the production. So you can raise your fees if you want. So that's one way, unless you're heavy insurance and you can't do that. But the only way to increase your overhead or decrease your overhead is to make more money or produce more or lower the expenses. And the easiest way is to increase your costs or increase your prices that way to lower the overhead. So keep that in mind. This is a very big deal. In order for you to be happy with your career is to lower that overhead so you're making more money. Managing your team, probably the most stressful thing that practices go through now. COVID hit, we lost employees. It's very difficult to find employees. I still remember that my hygienist, which I only had one of, came to me during COVID and told me, I need to cut down my hours. I need to work less. And I said, would you be okay if you stay on until I can find another hygienist to replace you or to work with you? And she said, sure. And lo and behold, I put ads in every possible website that you can do, on DM, Dental Post, Cloud Dentistry, you name it. And I did not get a single response from anybody. So to this day, she's still working in the office because she never left, because she appreciated what I did for them. But managing your team is very, very difficult. And I had a small team, like I told you. So my team was one person at the front, And we were able to accomplish that because we were not a very insurance-heavy practice. So one person at the front, I had 2 dental assistants, including an EFTA, who's an expanded function dental assistant, as well as 1 hygienist. That was my team. And then when we brought the associate, and the associate worked as another member of the team, and when she left, we brought in another associate as well. But that's all I had. So managing the team is a very difficult thing for some people. They don't like confrontation. But I will tell you, this day and age, there are so many remote services that will replace a team member that I highly recommend you look into some of these remote services. So what are things that that you can take away from your team and let someone else do? Anything at the front desk, answering calls. Answering calls takes such a time away from your team to help the patients in the office. There are so many services that you can forward the phone calls to. They'll serve as a call center for you, and you have your team focus on treating the patients who are in the office extremely well. Okay. Another big deal is if you take insurance, doing insurance verification, insurance billing afterwards. There are companies out there that will charge you a very small percentage to do all of these tasks for you. There are companies that charge you per insurance verification. They call the insurance company for you. They get you a complete breakdown of benefits. All of these things, will help you manage your team, especially if you're short an employee. You definitely want to be using a communication software that will confirm appointments. Anybody who's not using one of those programs, you have to use those programs as well. I mean, this is super important to managing your team and knowing how to manage it well. And probably the most important thing is you have to know when to delegate those services to certain employees. I was very good at delegation. I knew what team members enjoyed doing, what others didn't enjoy. And my office ran really well when I wasn't there because I delegated well. And my employees knew exactly what they needed to do. They knew what their job description was. They came into the office, they executed, and the practice ran extremely well without me actually being there. So you have to know when to delegate. And I know a lot of us are micromanagers, and we micromanage our business immensely. And I highly recommend, and I was a micromanager. I had to learn to give up control of some of these things. And you have to let your team do what they're good at to make your practice run better. And so it's very difficult as a business owner to give up some of that control. But if you know when to delegate and you have some of these remote services running, I think you'll have a happier team because they just do their thing. So managing the team is probably one of the most stressful things in the practice. Dealing with negative reviews. So I'm obviously, very experienced in dealing with negative reviews. I'm going to share some quick tips on dealing with them. But one of the very first reviews in my practice I ever got was a negative review. And the review, I still remember what it says. It said that Dr. Tau is not like Dr. Katz. He doesn't listen, and I don't feel like I'm being welcomed in the office. That's what the review basically says, to paraphrase. And that sent me reeling that I actually got a bad review. It was one of my first bad reviews out there. And getting reviews from patients became a big stress point for me, especially bad reviews. So how did I deal with it? I created a review software knowing it was such a big deal for dentists to deal with negative reviews. So I want to talk to you about how to specifically deal with negative reviews. I'm going to give you some examples on what to do and what not to do. So, by the way, if you are listening to this call and you have not gotten a negative review yet, you haven't been a dentist long enough. Okay? Dentists who get negative reviews is such a common thing. It's just like a dentist who does endo. If they haven't done enough endo, they haven't broken a file, or you haven't done enough endo if you haven't broken a file, however you want to look at it. If you haven't gotten a negative review, you haven't been a dentist long enough, because it will come. It's eventual. Patients don't like going to the dentist, so they're very free to post things online. So let's talk about some of the ways to deal with negative reviews. So the first thing you want to do, if you do get a bad review, is relax, calm down, and take a deep breath, because you don't want to answer inappropriately online. That will hurt you more than anything else. Okay? So number one is relax, calm down, take a deep breath. I do not recommend that you reach out, that you post online to begin with. Your response may not be the best response because you're emotional. I would wait about a week to respond if you feel you want to respond. If you do respond, you must always say you're sorry, even if you're not. And a lot of times we're not sorry with what happened in the office potentially because the patient's a pain in the butt, but you always want to say you're sorry. And you have to say you're sorry because you have to remember the person who's reading the review or who wrote the review is not the person you're responding to. You're responding to the people, all the other people who are reading the review and your response. So keep that in mind. You always want to say you're sorry. Now, I would wait about a week to respond, and I would contact the patients personally if you know who they are. Now, a lot of times they use an alias. They don't use their real name. You don't recognize the name. You may recognize what happened, but it's not the actual patient who it is. So if you do know who the patient is, you can reach out to the patient. You can potentially fix the problem, okay? Many times the patient will take the review down if they feel like you listen to them. And a lot of the reasons why patients write bad reviews is because they don't feel listened to, okay? So I would highly recommend you reach out to the patients via phone, via text message, via email, without responding to them online. If you respond online and you respond inappropriately, like I said, it can open up a whole can of worms. But the very best defense against a bad review is simply overwhelming it with positive reviews. That's going to be the very best way for you to deal with negatives. One day you're going to feel bad because you got a negative review. The next day you're going to feel great because you got a positive review. And if you get enough positives, at least 10 for each negative, you're going to overwhelm it and nobody's going to care about the negative review that you got. Just so you know, having 4.8 or 4.9 is what I consider a perfect score online. You don't need to have all 5-star reviews to be perfect. In fact, if you have only 5 stars, in my opinion, you are an imperfect business, okay? And a perfect business is one that deals with reviews and feedback perfectly. So the tips that I just gave you will help you deal with negative reviews, okay? If you have any other questions regarding negative reviews, please reach out to me afterwards, or you can put a question in the chat, and I'm happy to answer those, anything specific related to these negative reviews. Now, Danny, I think you said you wanted to share a story that you heard as well.
Just that after a yoga class, Len and I had a chance to speak briefly about this. There were a couple of gals that were talking about the fact that they both found a new dentist, and of course I couldn't help but ask. I said, "Well, what did you base your decision on?" And they both said it was the reviews, but it wasn't the reviews. It was how the doctor responded to the reviews, which goes to underscore the points that you just made and that we've both known for a long time, which is that the person posting the review is not your audience. And I completely concur with your advice that the best tactic, the best approach is to sit, relax, and take a deep breath. And because how you respond is going to make all the difference. I also like the suggestion that you reach out to people personally. I guess I would be curious to know why you suggest waiting an entire week before responding.
So the reason I recommend waiting at least a week before responding is because you want to let the dust settle. If you are too emotional, and some people take a week to forget about these things, if you respond and you're emotional, you may respond inappropriately because you have to also understand that you are dealing with HIPAA, and you can't violate HIPAA when you respond to the reviews. So this is kind of the best. Good.
I'm just saying that makes sense. My only counter to that or possible exception to that might be that if the person is really hopping mad and in that state might be that much more willing or likely to reach out to another dentist and request that records be transferred and that you may miss an opportunity. But I think that on balance, I would concur with your suggestion, your prescription that because doctors are human, dentists are humans too, and they do need time to sort of process. I mean, I get calls, not all the time, but I get calls from our health partners, and they say, "Well, what should I do? Or this person is wrong. You know, they're saying this happened and it didn't happen." So, you know, I can feel the emotional charge there. So I see why the first thing you want to make sure is that you diffuse any negative emotion before you reach out to the patient. So that makes sense.
Well, and again, just to clarify for those that are listening, if you don't know who the patient is and or you don't think the experience took place, feel free to respond, okay, right away, because you have nobody to reach out to. But I would give it a week so you have time to reach out to the patient. If you're reaching out to them trying to get them to take the review down necessarily, they're gonna know that you are attempting to reach out to you. So I don't think they're gonna look for a new dentist. That's why I would contact them offline first, and not make a public display of your communications. I've seen many times that they posted online inappropriately, and it's led to the patient responding and writing something worse. That's why
you're not suggesting
first.
they wait a week. You're not suggesting they wait a week to reach out to them personally.
No. I would contact them the very next day to reach out to them personally. So
Good,
it's
excellent.
only responding to the review online that I would wait a week to do. And the other reason is I don't know where people are located when they're listening to this webinar, but they may be, they're all over the country, hopefully on the replay too. If you are dealing with a Yelp review, Yelp reviews sometimes are taken down if Yelp doesn't consider them a recommended review. And if you respond to the review, the chance of it getting taken down is slim to none because you're validating what happened. So I would give it time also for that reason, because Yelp may end up putting the review in the filter anyway. Nobody's going to be able to see it. So that's the other reason
that's
why.
Interesting. That's good. I didn't realize that. That's great. Great to know.
Yep. So to recap, when you deal with negative reviews, relax, take a deep breath, and don't be emotional. Calm down. Respond a week later if you haven't been able to reach out to somebody. Be careful about HIPAA. That's a big deal. Technically, acknowledging them as a patient is considered a HIPAA violation. So the best response is this. We value all types of feedback, good or bad. We unfortunately are sorry that you had a bad experience or a poor experience in our practice. We are not able to comment due to HIPAA. We would love to have you contact us so we can discuss your concerns offline. Please contact the office and ask to speak with me and put your name, the dentist or someone else. But that's what you should respond with if you do choose to respond. Apologize, say HIPAA will prevent you from responding, and then you want someone to reach out to the practice to discuss their concerns, over the phone. Something like that is a really good response. But don't say we don't have a patient by your name. We don't give drugs to drug seekers, which is a very common response from some people. So just be careful how you respond. You don't want to leave waves of problems, and people think you're not nice because you responded in a poor manner. So just keep that in mind. I can go on I have a whole seminar for literally a whole hour just on dealing with negative reviews, but I only wanted to give it a couple of minutes so I don't overwhelm them with too much information on this. So hopefully that makes sense, Danny.
It does indeed. Thank you, Len.
Okay. Once the patients are in the office, the other thing that stresses people out is getting them to actually accept treatment. So I teach case acceptance classes. I'm a very big fan of getting the patients to say yes. So I'm going to share with you some of the tips to help increase your case acceptance, your treatment acceptance, getting the people to the most important thing, which is, yes, I want to do treatment. So here are some case presentation tips I came up with. Number one is you want to take your time. I recommend that the dentist does the case presentation, review the treatment that the patient needs. But take your time. You always want to present the ideal treatment plan first, even if it is over or too expensive. You definitely want to ask them. You want to ask for permission as well to present the ideal treatment plan first. Again, ask for permission. Watch your body language. I get excited when I present treatment. If you are boring, your patients are going to be bored, and you're not going to accept treatment. You want to sit up. You want to look them straight in the eyes, and you don't want to slouch. You don't want to, cross your arms. You want to be very confident when you present this stuff to the patients. And you also want to bring backup. So whenever I presented treatment, I always had someone in the room listening to what I was saying so they can write down all my notes. So I had someone there to answer any other questions if the patient had some questions that they felt more comfortable asking a member of my team. So these are some really hot tips to increase your case acceptance, as well as this. So these are some next level tips as well. So I don't believe that you should ever delegate the treatment presentation to a team member. I think the dentist should be responsible for that. I recommend you use patient speak, not doctor speak. So instead of the word scaling and root planing, call it a deep cleaning. Instead of a periapical pathology, say you have a pus pocket in your bone. In your bone, yes, correct. Stuff like that. Use terms the patient understands. If you start talking about the mesiodistal line angle of a tooth, you're going to lose the patient. Okay? You want to look at the patient's faces when you're presenting. You don't want to look at a screen or paper. So look them in the eye, sit at them at eye level. You also want to use visual aids. So there's a lot of visual aids out there. You have models, you have brochures, there's computer programs that you can present. There's definitely visual aids that you want to take with you. You want to present treatments and then listen and wait for the patient to respond. One of the things we're not very good at as dentists is we don't listen very well. As I mentioned in the review that I had gotten, the first review the reviewer wrote to me that Dr. Tau does not listen very well, and that hit home. I always thought I was a very good listener, so I actually took listening classes and learned how to listen better. I learned something called active listening. So when you have a moment, look up active listening on the internet. There's all different types of classes, or not even a class, but all different exercises you can go through to become a better listener. If there is urgency, you want to let them know the urgency when you present it to them. When they ask how much, stop presenting and tell them. We have to listen for those sales techniques. And when someone says, well, how much does this treatment cost? Stop, tell them, and see if they want to proceed with treatment. Okay? Don't say, wait, I got more things to go over with you. When they want to talk about money, stop. And let them express their concerns. So you want to hear what they think. You want to hear what their expectations are, and then move forward from there. So if you implement a lot of these things, you will definitely have an increase in your case acceptance. On the same note, and I didn't include it in the deck here, but I'll talk about it, is I also highly recommend that the dentist handles the financial presentation. So I was very good talking about money. When I first bought my practice in 2007, so many patients left the office without accepting treatment, and I couldn't understand why. So I would present treatment. The office manager would come in. They seemed excited. They would literally walk out without getting treatment done, and I couldn't understand why. I ended up firing my office manager, and I took that role over myself. I became the financial coordinator in my own office because I felt very comfortable talking about money. And my case acceptance went through the roof when I did that. Patients trusted me. They trusted me on what dentistry they needed, and they trusted me on how much something cost and how they can pay for it. And what I learned not to do was give discounts. And that's the biggest thing that the gurus say, is that when dentists present treatment, they're always discounting their treatment. If you don't discount the treatment, you should be very comfortable discussing money with patients. And also to get major case acceptance, you also need to be able to comfortable talking about third-party financing. And there's a ton of companies that offer third-party financing. If you don't take it because you want to get all your money up front without having that discount for third-party financing, I think you're missing the boat here. I think you have to offer third-party financing as a way to lower that monthly payment for the patient. Again, there's many companies that do that. I don't think I have to go into any specific companies here, but find a third-party company. You may take a 10 or 12% hit on your money, but I'd rather have 88% of something than 0% of zero. And if the patient doesn't do treatments, you're getting 0% of zero. So again, keep those in mind when it comes to treatment planning. The other thing I would highly recommend you do, and I was very good at this, is also calling the patients ahead of time. So I love talking to patients before they came in the office. Introduce yourself as a dentist, find out what they need, what they're coming in for. Let them know that you're going to find something financially for them to be able to afford the treatment, because patients don't like coming to the dentist anyway. You want to make them feel comfortable. This is something that I call disarming the patients. And if you can disarm them before they come in or even when they're in the chair, they will accept treatment from you. So that's a very, very big deal, is disarming the patients. Now, planning your transition. There's a time and day you know that you are done with dentistry to some extent. I knew that in 2010 that I just had a little bit of time left. I knew that COVID kind of convinced me it was time to sell, as I said. I was talking to a dentist today who's 62 years old. She's getting frustrated with insurances and team, everything I talked about, insurances, teams, handling the team. She's not happy with her marketing company. And she said she wants to plan her transition in the next 2 years. So when you are ready to plan your transition, the first thing you have to do is don't let anybody know, but you have to get your practice ready for a transition. So what does that involve? Well, that involves making sure the books are clean, that you're not you want to make sure that you're not taking any any extra deductions out of the practice that the new owners potentially would not be able to do either. Definitely clean the books, because they're going to be scrutinized immensely by the experts that the person hires to look at your practice. You want to obviously make sure you're bringing in as much money as possible, because, and especially if it's within a couple of years, they're going to look at 3 years tax returns to determine how much value they put on the practice. So when you find it's time to transition, reach out to an expert in the space, someone who is a transition expert, and that way you can get ready to move to the next level of your life, whether it be retirement, whether it be that you want to go back to being an associate. I was an associate for 1 year, a little over 1 year after I sold the practice, and it was a very interesting experience for me. I had not been an associate since 1999 and to 2004. I was an associate then, and I never realized what it would be like to become an associate again. But you have to understand what you're going to be left with. You have to understand the taxes. I was blown away when I paid my taxes in 2022 for 2021 when I sold the practice. You can't imagine how many taxes you pay when you sell your practice. So it leaves you with a lot less money than you think when you actually sell it. So these are just awesome tips when you plan your transition. So one of the greatest skills in entrepreneurship is knowing what you can't do. And that was said by Mark Cuban, someone I love, Shark Tank. And I heard this and I was like, this is perfect. So you have to understand what you're not good at or what you can't do and give it to someone else to do. So please keep that in mind as you re-listen to this, that there's things that as a business owner are not going to want to do or can't do because you don't have the skills. You have to recognize it and hire an expert in your space to help you do it. And that's what I did throughout my entire career. So I told you that at the beginning, I bought a practice, I gutted the practice, and I built the practice of my dreams, but I wasn't living the life of my dreams. So fast forward now, 15 years later, I now reside in Florida. I've been here 2 years as of yesterday. We moved, on the 30th. October 30th, we moved down to Florida from Philadelphia. Now I'm living the life of my dreams. So check this out. This is... So that's actually my backyard. Those homes you see are all rebuilt. They're all brand new homes that were done across the street from me. But that's where I live right now. So I am living the life of my dreams. And I hope you guys respect that and appreciate that. So just as we finish up here, I want to share with you a couple of things. There's going to be a QR code that will give you the ability to find that information. I'm very, very connected in the industry. So I created a resource guide for people who can help grow your practice, whether it be from a marketing perspective, a billing perspective, an accounts receivable perspective, a third-party financing perspective. There are about 35 vendors on this list that know that they will help you and trust your practice. So scan this code if you want to learn more, or you can go to resources.drlentau.com if you want to go straight there. But this QR code will take you there. So if you take out your phones, you can scan this code. That's one of them. I have a podcast. It's called the Raving Patients Podcast. Comes out Fridays at 5 a.m. Every week a new episode comes out. We're going into season 6 in January. So we're 5 seasons in, about 250 episodes available to you. It started out as a review podcast. Now it's a way to grow your practice. So if you like podcasts, feel free to scan this and listen to it. Again, Fridays at 5 a.m. I also have a Facebook group by the same name, Raving Patients. This is a group where we help practices grow. We help them answer how to deal with negative reviews. So people post their bad reviews. They can do it anonymously, and members of the group will help them respond or help them deal with the issues that are there. So we have about 4,300 members in the Facebook group. So if you're on Facebook, feel free to join. There's no sales in this group at all. I have a newsletter that came out in September. So we're about 2 months into the newsletter. Comes out weekly. It's all about information. There's no sales in this newsletter. So if you want some interesting information, you can subscribe to this newsletter as well. And we froze here. This is my contact information. So if you want to get a hold of me, you've got my email, you've got my cell phone, you've got this QR code that you can scan, and it will ask you for your information. So we're connected. and I will provide you with all of my information as well. I actually like this QR code a lot. It's called the Popl, POPL is the app that it uses, Popl Me. Highly recommend this for a digital business card. So again, you can check out the information here that I provided as well. And I want to end this with a term that I've kind of, or a quote that I came up with very young. Life is short, work hard, play hard, because you never know when it's going to end. So Danny, thank you so much for having me. Oh, and by the way, for those that are interested, I have a free book to give you. I think we have 19 or 17 attendees, whatever the number is. I have a book. I have two books, actually. One is called Raving Patience, which is this one here. And I have another book called 100 Plus Tips to Generating 100 Plus Reviews in 100 Days. This book I can offer as a free download. So if you want to email me at my email address, len@drlentau.com, I will, and just say, hey, you watched the webinar. I will send you a free copy of my book. It will come digitally through email to you. So email me your information. I will send you this book. Danny, thank you so much for having me part of your webinar series. I apologize for the technical difficulties we had in the beginning, but I hope your attendees enjoyed it.
No worries at all. Thank you very much, Len, for another terrific presentation. The time just flies when you're doing what you do, because you do it so well. And also want to thank you for those great resources that you've allowed people to be able to access immediately. And now let's jump into some questions. Number one, you mentioned outsourcing calls to a call center. We've had very little success finding a company with the requisite skills to consistently communicate our policies and philosophies. Do you have any recommendations?
Actually, I do. So I have a couple there. So there's a company called Golden Goose Scheduling, which is a company that Christopher Phelps, who's a dentist, started. He teaches all of the employees that he hires the power of persuasion. He's trained on the power of persuasion. So they do a very good job at relaying the information, scheduling new patients to come in the office, and actually having them show up. So that's if you want to focus on new patients. There's also a company called, now they're called Reach, R-E-A-C-H. They used to be called Callforce, and they can handle things during hours. If there's overflow, they can handle them after hours as well. And they will answer the phone. They will serve as your front desk person. They will learn about your office. They have access to your Dentrix or EagleSoft or Open Dental or whatever practice management software you have. And they will be able to book appointments as well for you and serve as an additional front desk person.
Terrific. Yeah, I know Chris. He's a good man. I think he's out of North Carolina, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep, he's in Charlotte.
Charlotte, yep. Next, can you review the ways a practice can reduce expenses? Maybe just kind of review the list that you went through.
All right.
I think you mentioned that it's difficult to reduce expenses.
The
main way to address that is to
expenses.
increase revenue, right? Yeah.
Right. You increase revenue, you raise your prices. So how do you so one is to look, our highest expense in the dental practice is going to be employees' expenses by far. So a lot of times by eliminating some employees who you're overlapping work, if there's too many people at the front desk. So saving payroll is going to be the biggest expense you have. So by lightening the load on number of employees you have, that's a huge way to be able to decrease your expenses. Obviously, lab, it's tough. You have them. Look, I had a very high lab bill because I was doing implants and Invisalign, and they were high lab bills. So my lab expense was much higher than that because a lot of the work I was doing was lab expenses. Obviously, rent, you either rent or buy your building. Consumables, you don't go nuts when it comes to buying. You look at using. There's a company called Torch Dental, Torch, Torch Dental, that they will find the cheapest price for you. They take a percentage of what they save you, so you're paying them some money based on what they're saving you, but they will find you the best prices on some of these materials, and that's called Torch. So we saved a ton of money that way.
Yeah, and cash flow too. I think there's an art to managing inventory too, which is just maintaining the optimal level.
You wait till you have one left before you order. You don't order ahead of time. It's not like going to Costco where you have 50 things. You don't need all those things to run a business. So I definitely think there's an art to ordering supplies. And then marketing. Look, I think your marketing expense 6% is the average or the ideal number. If you're spending less than that, so many practices spend less than that. But and they're afraid because they don't know what type of results they're going to get from the marketing. But if you look at it, if you're $1 million practice, you should be spending $60,000 a year on marketing,
or $5,000 a month,
which is $5,000 a month. Now, Danny, you're the marketing guy, just like I am. At $5,000 a month, how much do you think the practice should see in revenue from that $5,000 if the marketing is done properly?
Yeah, quite a bit. If you measure the long-term practice value, recognize that the new patient represents a stream of future income. 30 to 1 on your return is what we're seeing with our
100% so. And if you don't have that big vision and you only look at the immediate expense, if you're spending $5,000 a month, if you're doing your marketing right, you could be getting $20,000 to $30,000 a month in return very easily. And if I got that type of return, I would spend more money. I would put gasoline on that fire and add more money to that marketing if that's the type of expense I'm getting.
Right. Well, actually, we're
somewhat nearsighted in that sense. Yeah.
No, we are. And I think a lot of it is that dentists are not comfortable. They don't really understand, first of all, how to calculate return on investment and what the inputs to the calculation are. You need to know how to determine, well, what do we mean by return? And we believe that a reasonable measure of return is what is a patient worth to you? That's it. Not how much are you going to make on the first visit from a new patient, unless you're never going to allow that patient into your practice or accept referrals and recare from them.
Right.
That's short-sighted.
You have to remember,
to your point. Right.
For every patient you get, they can refer 2 or 3 other patients to you. So you're I always thought that every patient would be a great patient for my practice. I soon learned that not every patient would be able to afford my fees. And I didn't get upset when patients didn't accept treatment. But the ones that do, if you treat them well and you give them a great experience, they're going to refer their friends and family to you. And that's exponentially. That's what makes marketing even more effective.
Yes, sir. It's all about the average, and it's all about increasing your average. And that's what 100%. Makes the difference. And that leads into the next question, which is, can you be more specific about how to determine the optimal marketing budget? And I would just say that, it does depend on the situation. Are you a startup? How competitive is your area?
More money.
Yeah. How fast? How much do you want to grow? So it's all about, as you said, getting specific and getting realistic on your plans and writing them down.
And writing your goals down as well is really important when it comes to a marketing perspective. So if you're just looking, foundational marketing, which is what Bird Eye does, we get you reviews, we get you listed online, is very inexpensive. If you're going to if you want to attract full arch implant cases to your practice, it's going to cost you $8,000, $7,000, $10,000 a month, but you could be generating $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 in return. And when you do that, you're going to want to spend more money to get double that amount. So I think it depends on what type of procedures you're trying to attract, if you're a startup or not. If you're a startup, it's going to cost you more money to market. These are all factors involved in determining what a marketing budget is.
I think what a lot of people don't realize is that there's 2 factors. There's a point of diminishing return with marketing, as there is with anything else, but there's also a minimum critical mass that you need to invest, so that if you don't invest sufficiently in marketing, you're kind of setting yourself up for failure by not doing what needs to be done. And the investment necessary over time actually decreases, because when you first start marketing, there's a certain amount of inertia you need to overcome. There's a certain number of investments you need to make that are more or less one time. For instance, if you don't have a website and you need to get a website, right? That's a one-time investment, which isn't to say isn't to say you're not going to want to tweak it or revise it from time to time. You will, but training your team on how to answer the phone, getting SEO set up, on-site SEO, that stuff. There's some heavy lifting that has to take place initially, and then you can begin to coast a little bit. So that's how I would address it.
100%. Yes.
Yeah. Let's see. Why do you advise the dentist present the financial side of case presentation? Can it not be successfully delegated?
So I know, and I say no from my own experiences, that when an employee presented at my office, the case acceptance was not ideal numbers. And ideally, when in case acceptance, a perfect number is somewhere between 75 and 85% of people accepting treatment. When I took it over, the patients trusted me, like I said, and I was able to get them to get the treatment done much more consistently than someone who I was having delegating that. So look, it's not made for everyone. I teach it as that way. I teach a class called The Art of the Sale that talks about how to present treatment to patients and finances to patients. But I know that in my perspective, that me presenting the finances increased my case acceptance simply because I checked the numbers and I examined it. So can someone else be effective? Sure. I mean, there's women, like there's one woman, her name is Shireen Washington. Her name of a company is Real Talk. She teaches dentists and their teams how to get really high case acceptance. She does it in a way that's just talking to the patient. She's very effective at getting that. Your typical person at the front, or your typical or your average front desk person or a treatment coordinator is not going to have the same case acceptance, in my opinion, that a dentist is going to have. Again, that's from firsthand knowledge of me doing it.
Well, I would concur in my experience too, because the first thing the person needs to do is to believe in the value themselves. And so often you really drill down and talk to some team members, and they're like, "Well, I couldn't afford this." Well, so or I don't know that I would do this. So there's a certain amount of, for lack of a better term, perhaps gravitas, that the person doing the case presentation has got to have, and that comes from a sincere, firm, ingrained belief in the value of what you're presenting. And the other point that you made is always present ideal treatment after getting permission, because anything that follows from that is going to seem more affordable anyway. And let's not make decisions for our patients. Let's not assume that they're not going to value this, because people with different levels of income are going to pay more on dentistry than some people who have higher levels of income, because it's all the value proposition. They may be getting ready for a wedding or a trip or getting back into the dating scene or interviewing for a job, and so that full mouth reconstruction is something that they value very highly. And it's all on how it's presented.
That's what you're also competing against, Danny. You're competing against those things that people buy, trips to Florida or a vacation.
That's right.
Versus getting my teeth fixed. I mean, that's your competition. And one thing I wanted to mention was that, and I just forgot what I was going to say. That's funny. I'll think about it. Continue on, and I'll
sure you will. Yeah.
Yeah,
well,
I forgot that.
So it has to do with sort of the mindset of the person doing the presentation, and I agree with you. You're not competing with what you're competing with are other discretionary decisions that a person is going to want to make, and what you have to do is place it in perspective. You got to sell the benefits. It's not, this is what we're going to do and this is how it's going to feel and this is what's going to happen afterwards. It's like, what's important to you, finding out so case presentation is mostly, and I think you mentioned this, it's mostly about effective sales is mostly about listening. It's getting
100%.
What's important to this person. And if you connect with them and watch your body language, as you said, you make the environment conducive to a person sharing and elaborating. And the more they talk, the more they're going to let you know what's important to them. And then you can honestly present to them how you can help them or not. But at least now you know, and you've confirmed by asking if you can confirm what they said to confirm your understanding. They know that they've been heard, that they've been respected and appreciated. And now they're in a mindset where they're more likely to accept treatment, because it does boil down to what's important to them and can they trust you.
Right. And now I remember what I wanted to say. So if someone says, no, maybe I need to speak with my spouse, what type of follow-up system do we have in the dental office? We're not very good at following up. So are you following up with them like one day, 1 week, 1 month, 2 days later, 2 months later, 2 weeks later, or 2 months later? What's your follow-up? And you must ask permission from the patient. If they say no, well, I know you're going to go home and talk to your husband. Can I check in with you next week to see if you have any questions? If the patient says no, you've got a big problem. They're not doing treatment. So that's why I ask permission to follow up with somebody when they say no, maybe, or I need to check with my spouse.
Well, that brings another interesting point. Did you have much experience, especially during COVID, with teledentistry? Because I know that a lot of our health partners had a lot of success with that, and what they realized was you could overcome the so-called spouse objection by actually doing case presentation in the comfort of their own home, I did that a lot. Yeah,
I did it a lot.
So that was actually one of the silver linings of a COVID experience. I think people began to realize that we can be more efficient with our time, and we can meet with both spouses at the same time, which can overcome that need to talk to my wife or my husband.
Yeah, one of the best benefits of COVID was that it eliminated the waiting rooms. And in the office that I had and sold, I love not having a waiting room. I love people waiting in their cars. They never complained. When we were ready for them, we called them or texted them. They came in the office. There was nobody waiting in the waiting rooms. So I think COVID was good in some ways to run a business, but obviously from an overall perspective, it wasn't good for everything else. But that was one of the benefits of actually COVID, in my opinion.
Yep, agreed. What value do you believe having a proven marketing plan adds to the sale price of a practice? And I might ask specifically, did it help you?
Yes. So my practice was very visible online. I was one of the I want to say founding fathers of marketing in Philadelphia, but I taught all of my colleagues how to market their practice. I was light years ahead of them. I had a ton of good reviews. My online presence was extremely valuable. So when someone came in, they just had to, and the name would never change. It was Pennsylvania Center for Dental Excellence. So there was no name changing. She just took over the practice. So I got a premium on my price because I was so established from a marketing perspective online. So I truly believe that if you invest in the marketing, your practice is more valuable. If you look better online, would someone rather buy a practice that has 350 reviews with 4.9 stars? Or I met a dentist in Alabama who has 25 reviews with a 2.9 stars, and she wants to sell a practice in a year. So she's not going to get the same value for a practice that someone else would.
Right, but I wonder how many purchases really factor and assign a tangible value to that. You're preaching to the choir.
Not.
It's hugely valuable. If I were buying a practice, I'd say, well, what's your system for generating new patients? And if they had one, I'd pay more. And if they didn't, I wouldn't.
Correct.
The other thing to point out is that the fact that your name wasn't Len Tau DDS, or DMD, it was Pennsylvania Center for Dental Excellence. Makes a big difference.
And that's another thing I failed to mention when I was talking about planning your transition. If your practice is your name as the practice, like he said, Len Tau DMD, you need to make sure a couple years prior to selling your practice that you rebrand the practice. You pick a name that's more generic, because when you sell the practice, your name isn't valuable anymore. Having a practice as a generic name or just a name, Pennsylvania Center for Dental Arts or whatever you want to make it, that's more valuable to someone buying it than your name as well.
Absolutely.
So since you mentioned
the tax bill, I guess that prompted this question. Any tips for reducing tax burden when selling one's practice?
When selling a practice, it's very hard to reduce the tax bill. I can tell you the best thing to do is you have to assign a specific amount to the goodwill and a specific amount to the equipment. The higher the equipment amount, the less taxes you're going to pay. You're only going to pay you're paying capital gains on the goodwill. You're paying regular tax bracket on the equipment. So significantly less money on that. So, but you're selling a practice. It's hard to reduce the tax benefits.
Yeah. Well, you get to keep most of the money. So the bigger your tax, the other way to look at it is the higher the taxes, the more money you made.
And that's the way I've always been. The more money I'm making, the more taxes I'm paying. Simple as that.
Yeah, we all should want to pay a lot of taxes, at least given the code. Last, we'll just start with a comment and end with a comment instead of a question. I love the suggestion to have the doctor disarm the patient by calling them before their first appointment. I love that too.
That's what I teach. So, I've been teaching that concept for a year.
I know you do. All right, with that, let me just remind everybody, in a few days, you'll receive an email detailing how to apply to receive your 1.5 hours of CE. I now want to invite you to mark your calendars for Thursday, December 1st, when my very special guest will be Monique Long, whose presentation is titled 8 Revenue Cycle Management Tools Your Practice Cannot Live Without. While revenue cycle management may sound dry or even overwhelming, it need not be. There are valuable tools and resources available to help you. We dive into which ones are proven to work and not waste your valuable time with those that don't. As an attendee, you will learn to identify and harness the tools and resources already in your dental practice management software to improve and track your cash flow, demonstrate how just 10 minutes a day can improve revenue cycle management in your dental practice, set clear expectations for your team and patients, and recognize the most common revenue cycle management roadblocks that are 100% avoidable. It all happens on Thursday, December 1st, so be sure to save the date and watch your inbox to register. Until then, this is Danny Bobrow thanking you for your continued commitment to practice perfection, and thanks once again to Dr. Len Tau. Goodbye, everybody.
Thank you very much.